Han was tired, not the normal kind of tired that sleep could fix. He was the kind of tired that made his bones feel heavy and his eyes burn like someone had thrown sand into them. 16 hours of counting cargo boxes, checking manifests, and arguing with dock workers had broken something inside him. Orbital Station Gamma 7 was chaos tonight. The annual Galactic Trade Summit had brought ships from every corner of known space. Humans, species had only read about in school, were now walking past him in the crowded corridors. The air smelled like 100 different worlds mixed together, and the noise was unbearable. All wanted was to get on his transport ship and sleep for the 3 days it would take to reach Earth. He pulled out his nav pad and squinted at the screen. The device was old, a cheap model his company refused to replace. The screen flickered, showing docking port 7D, his ride home. His feet moved on their own. Left turn, right turn, down a corridor that seemed quieter than the others. Strange, he thought. The main areas were so packed that people had to walk sideways. Why was this section empty? He was too tired to think about it. The door to docking port 7B slid open, walked inside without looking up from his nav pad. The floor felt soft under his boots, almost like walking on moss. The air changed, it was warmer here, and it smelled like flowers after rain. Wait. Looked up. This was not his ship. The walls were alive. They glowed with soft blue and purple light, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Control panels floated in the air, made of something that looked like liquid glass. There were no chairs, no hard metal surfaces, no familiar human technology anywhere. He turned around to leave. The airlock door sealed behind him with a sound like a whisper. No, 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 no. Ran to the door and pressed every button he could find. Nothing happened. He banged his fists against the surface. It was warm and slightly soft like skin. The floor vibrated. A deep hum filled the air. Through a window he had not noticed before, saw the stars stretch into long lines of light. The ship had jumped to hyperspace. His legs gave out. He sat on the strange, soft floor and stared at nothing. This was not happening. He had entered the wrong ship, the wrong alien ship, and now he was going somewhere he did not know with beings he had never met. Footsteps, soft, multiple footsteps approaching. Stood up quickly, his heart pounding. A door he had not seen before opened in the wall itself, and 3 figures stepped through. They were tall, taller than any human woman he had ever seen. Their skin was silver, shining softly in the bioluminescent light. Each of them had 4 arms, 2 larger ones and 2 smaller ones tucked close to their bodies. Their eyes were large and gold, like pools of melted metal. The one in front wore something that looked like a captain's uniform, dark blue with symbols did not recognize. She studied him the way a scientist might study a new insect. "A human," she said. Her voice was musical, each word carrying multiple tones. "A human male, here on my ship." Raised his hand slowly. "I made a mistake, wrong docking port. I'm supposed to be on a transport to Earth, if you could just take me back." "We have already entered hyperspace," the captain said. She walked closer, circling him slowly. Her gold eyes did not blink. "Returning now would cost us significant fuel and 17 days of travel time. Unacceptable." "Unacceptable," his voice cracked. "I don't belong here, this is kidnapping." The captain tilted her head. The movement was strange, too smooth, like her neck had extra joints. "You entered our ship willingly. We did not take you, we simply kept you." One of the other aliens, shorter than the captain with darker silver skin, stepped forward. Her face showed something that might have been concern. "Captain, perhaps we should discuss this. He seems distressed." "Of course he is distressed, Bora. He is a human male, alone, surrounded by unknown beings." Captain's lips curved into something almost like a smile. "But he is also an unprecedented opportunity. When did our species last have access to a living human male for study? Never. We have only observed them from great distances. Study, the word made stomach turn cold. I'm not a lab rat, he said, his voice stronger now. Fear was turning into anger. Good, anger he could use. You can't just keep me here like some kind of specimen. The third alien, younger than the others with curious, wide eyes, practically bounced with excitement. He's magnificent. Look at his structure. Only 2 arms, yet so much muscle density. And the way he speaks, so direct. I've read that humans are direct, but experiencing it is completely different. Danny, please, Bora said gently. You are not helping. Captain raised one of her larger hands, and silence fell. She stood directly in front of Now, close enough that he could see the tiny lights moving under her silver skin like stars. Human, she said, what is your name? He hesitated, then Han. Han, she tasted the words. I am captain of the research vessel. These are my crew members, Bora and Danny. We are a species dedicated to scientific discovery. She paused. Our mission is 3 years long. We cannot deviate from our course. You will remain with us until we reach a sector where human vessels travel. 3 years. The words hit him like a physical blow. However, continued, you will be treated well. Good food, comfortable quarters, no harm will come to you. We simply wish to learn. Looked at the sealed door, at the alien walls, at the 3 silver women watching him with golden eyes full of curiosity. He was trapped, completely, utterly trapped. But he was also human, and humans, throughout all their history, had never accepted cages quietly. Fine, he said slowly. I'll stay for now, but I promise you this, I won't make it easy. Captain's smile grew wider. I would be disappointed if you did. The room they gave was nicer than his apartment on Earth. The bed was soft, shaped perfectly to his body like it had learned his shape while he slept. The walls glowed with gentle light that changed color based on his mood, blue when he was calm, red when he was angry, which meant the walls were red most of the time. Food arrived 3 times a day through a small opening in the wall. It was strange but delicious fruits that tasted like nothing he had ever eaten, meat that melted on his tongue, drinks that filled him with energy. They were treating him like a guest who could not leave. On the 3rd day, made his first escape attempt. He had watched the walls carefully, studying how the doors appeared and disappeared. There seemed to be a pattern, a slight change in the light before an opening formed. When Bora came to check on him, he waited until the door began to close, then ran. He made it 20 steps down the corridor before the floor grabbed him. It simply rose up around his feet, soft but impossibly strong, holding him in place like he had stepped into concrete. Struggled and cursed while Bora walked slowly toward him, her expression a mixture of concern and fascination. Interesting, she said, pulling out a small device and scanning him. Your heart rate has increased by 40%. Adrenaline levels are extremely high. Your body is preparing for combat or escape, yes. Let me go. The ship's immune system will release you once you calm down. She crouched beside him, her gold eyes soft. I am sorry, I understand this is difficult, but please do not hurt yourself. It took 10 minutes for the floor to release him. 10 minutes of Bora talking softly, explaining that the ship was alive, that it sensed threats and responded to protect itself and its crew. 10 minutes of feeling completely helpless. Second escape attempt came 5 days later. He had noticed that the ship's immune system did not react when crew members moved quickly. Perhaps it recognized them. Perhaps he could trick it. He stole a piece of fabric from his bedding and wrapped it around his arm, hoping it would carry enough of the ship's scent to confuse the systems. Then he waited by the door, quiet and calm, until Danny entered for her daily observation session. He ran past her before she could react. This time he made it further down 2 corridors, past a room full of floating equipment, almost to what looked like an escape pod bay. Then the walls moved. Not the floor this time. The walls themselves shifted, closing in front of him, reshaping the corridor into a dead end. Behind him, more walls grew, boxing him in completely. He stood in a tiny room of pulsing light, breathing hard, while Danny's voice came through the walls. That was very clever. The fabric idea was genuinely creative. Most species would not have thought of that. Is going to be so annoyed that you almost reached the pods. The chief engineer had seen her only twice, a tall with darker silver skin and a permanent expression of irritation. She looked at him like he was a bug that had crawled into her engine room. The walls eventually opened, revealing Captain herself. She did not look angry, she looked impressed. 2 attempts in 8 days, she said. The ambassador we once transported did not attempt escape for 6 months. You are remarkably persistent. I'm just getting started, replied. His 3rd attempt was the most ambitious. By now he had learned some things about the ship. It was called and it was alive in a way human ships never were. It was grown, not built, and it responded to the thoughts and emotions of its crew. They did not have physical controls, they communicated with the ship directly through touch and intention. Could not communicate with the ship, but he could hurt it. He found a sharp edge on a piece of equipment in his room, a mirror-like device that was probably meant for grooming. He spent 2 hours carefully working it loose, then sharpened one edge against the wall. When the ship opened a door for his evening meal, drove the sharp edge into the wall beside the opening. The screamed. Not with sound, but with light. Every surface in the ship flashed red, then white, then red again. A vibration ran through the floor, through the walls, through his bones. The air itself seemed to shudder. And then the ship rejected him. The floor beneath him became liquid. The walls pushed him away. Every surface in his room suddenly refused to let him touch it, sliding and shifting until he was forced out into the corridor, then pushed further, then further still, until he found himself in a large open space surrounded by every member of the crew. 12 women stared at him, some with curiosity, some with fear, some with anger. Stepped forward, her 4 arms were crossed and her gold eyes burned. You stabbed the ship. You hurt a living being because you wanted to escape. Stood his ground. I did what I had to do. The has been alive for 300 years. It carries us, feeds us, protects us. It is a member of our family, and you wounded it like a savage. The word hit harder than expected. Savage. Is that what he was? A primitive creature lashing out at things it did not understand. No, he refused to accept that. I'm a prisoner, he said, looking at each crew member in turn. I didn't ask to be here. I don't want to be here. Every living thing fights for its freedom. That's not savage, that's nature. Silence. Then made a sound, something between a grunt and a laugh. Nature, she repeated. You stab our ship, trigger a ship-wide emergency, get rejected by a biological system that has never rejected anyone before, and you stand there talking about nature. She shook her head slowly. Humans are insane. Maybe, admitted, but we're also stubborn. I won't stop trying. I know, said, and for the first time there was something other than contempt in her voice, something almost like respect. That's what worries me. Captain stepped forward and placed one of her smaller hands on shoulder. The touch was gentle, almost warm. We will return you to your people when we can, she said. Until then, you are part of this ship, whether you accept it or not. That has already begun to recognize you. It would not have rejected you so strongly if it did not, in some strange way, consider you one of its own. Looked around at the silver women, at the pulsing walls, at the soft light that was slowly returning to normal colors. He was still a prisoner, but perhaps he thought there were different kinds of prisons, and different ways to survive them. 3 weeks passed and stopped trying to escape. It was not because he had given up. Humans did not give up. This was something they were beginning to understand about him. He stopped because he realized that fighting was not the only way to survive. If he was going to be stuck on this ship, he would make himself useful. He would learn. He would adapt. And when the right moment came, he would be ready. He started with language. They spoke a musical tongue that seemed impossible for human throats, but their translation devices worked both ways. Asked Danny to teach him basic phrases, and she agreed with far too much enthusiasm. "Your pronunciation is terrible," she told him happily during their 5th lesson. "But your memory is excellent. You have learned in 3 days what most species take 3 weeks to understand." "Humans are fast learners," said. "We have to be. Our planet keeps trying to kill us." Danny's eyes went wide. "Your own planet tries to kill you." "Earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes, floods, diseases, extreme heat, extreme cold," counted them on his fingers. "And those are just the natural things. We also have animals that want to eat us. Snakes, sharks, bears, crocodiles." "How is your species not extinct?" Smiled, "We're too stubborn to die." He started spending time in different parts of the ship. Bora allowed him into the medical bay, where he learned about biology, how they were all female, how they reproduced through a complex process involving genetic merging, how their silver skin was actually millions of tiny light-producing cells that changed color based on emotion. "You cannot lie well," Bora explained, showing him how her skin flickered between shades. "Your faces show emotion, yes, but you can control that. We cannot hide our feelings. Our skin betrays us." "That sounds difficult," said. "It makes our society more honest." Bora's skin turned a soft pink, but also more vulnerable. Was harder to approach. The chief engineer spent most of her time in the engine room, a vast space filled with organic machinery that pulsed and hummed like a giant heart. She ignored the first 3 times he visited. On the 4th visit, she finally spoke. "Why do you keep coming here?" "I want to learn," said simply. "On human ships, I worked in logistics, cargo management, boring work, but I always wanted to understand how things actually worked." Studied him for a long moment. Then she pointed to a complex structure growing from the wall. "That is the primary neural cluster. It processes all communication between the systems. What do you see?" Looked carefully. "The pattern is irregular. That section there," he pointed, "is pulsing faster than the rest. Is something wrong?" Skin flickered with surprise. "You noticed that, after only a few minutes of observation." "Is it a problem?" "A small one. A connection is failing in the secondary power distribution network. I have been trying to repair it for 2 days, but the access tunnel is too narrow for my body." She spread all 4 of her arms. "Are not built for tight spaces." Looked at the access tunnel. It was small, barely wider than his shoulders. Hot air blew from it, and he could see the faint glow of malfunctioning components deep inside. "I could fit," he said. Laughed. It was not a kind laugh. You cannot even communicate with the ship. You would not know what to repair or how." "Then teach me." She stared at him. Her skin shifted through several colors: doubt, curiosity, something that might have been consideration. "Fine," she said finally. "But if you damage anything, I will personally put you back in that tunnel and leave you there." The next 6 hours were the hardest of his life. The tunnel was tight and hot. The temperature inside reached levels that made his skin burn and his lungs struggle for air. The organic components were delicate, requiring precise movements, and instructions came through a small communication device in his ear, often frustrated, sometimes insulting, occasionally impressed. "No, not that one, the blue fiber, not the green. Humans are sometimes, this is a problem." "I can see colors fine," gasped. "It's hard to tell them apart when sweat is pouring into my eyes." "Then wipe your eyes." "I can't move my arms that much in here." A pause, then quieter. "You are still working. The temperature in that tunnel is 47 degrees. Most species would have collapsed by now." "Humans are stubborn," reminded her, reaching for the blue fiber. When he finally emerged, he was burned, exhausted and covered in biological residue that smelled like burnt sugar. But behind him, the neural cluster pulsed in a steady, healthy rhythm. Looked at the repaired system, without a word she walked away. The next morning found that his quarters had been upgraded. The bed was larger, the food selection had expanded, and a small window now showed the stars outside. A gift from, though she would never admit it. Captain called a meeting that evening. All 12 crew members gathered in the common area, with standing awkwardly among them. "We have a decision to make," announced. "Has been with us for nearly 1 month. He has attempted escape 3 times, caused 1 ship-wide emergency, and learned more about our systems than any outsider in our history." She looked at him with those unblinking gold eyes. "He has also saved us 2 days of repair work and demonstrated abilities we did not know humans possessed." She turned to the crew. "I propose we stop treating him as a specimen. I propose we treat him as a temporary crew member, with limited access to ship systems and the responsibility that comes with it." Silence. Then Danny raised all 4 hands enthusiastically. Bora nodded, her skin glowing warm pink. One by one, other crew members agreed. Only remained still for a long moment. Then she spoke. "He is loud, clumsy, smells strange, and asks too many questions." She crossed her arms. "But he does not quit. He works until he succeeds or his body fails. This is acceptable." The vote was unanimous. That night sat in his new quarters, looking out at the stars. He was still a long way from home, still trapped on an alien ship with beings who saw him as something between a curiosity and a pet. But something had changed. He was no longer just a specimen to be studied. He was crew. And that thought was a start. The nebula was beautiful. Colors that had no words for swirled through space like paint in water, deep purples bleeding into burning oranges, electric blues dancing with soft greens. The moved slowly through this cosmic storm, its sensors recording everything for scientific study. Stood at the observation deck with Danny, who was practically vibrating with excitement. "This nebula has never been mapped," she explained, her skin glowing bright with joy. "The radiation here blocks most scanning technology. We are the first research vessel to enter it successfully. Everything we discover will be named by our crew." "You can name a cloud of space gas?" asked. "You can name everything, stars, formations, chemical compounds." She grabbed his arm with 2 of her hands. "If we find a new element, we could call it." He laughed. After 2 months on the ship, Danny's enthusiasm had grown on him. She reminded him of his younger sister back on Earth, always excited, always curious, always talking too fast. The alarm changed everything. It was not loud. Ships did not use harsh sounds. Instead, the walls shifted to a deep, warning red, and a low hum filled the air. Captain's voice came through the ship's communication system. "All crew to the command center, immediately." The command center was a large room at the heart of the ship, filled with floating displays and organic control surfaces. By the time arrived, most of the crew was already there, their silver skin flickering with shades of fear and concern. On the main display, another ship hung in space. It was not beautiful like it was sharp and angular, built from dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Weapons ports lined its surface like open wounds. "Hunting vessel," said quietly. She was standing next to, and for once her voice held no irritation, only worry. "Raiders. They target isolated ships, steal cargo, take prisoners. They are faster than us and much better armed." "Can we run?" asked. "In this nebula, the radiation interferes with our engines. We are operating at 30% efficiency." The communication system crackled. A voice came through, harsh, guttural, nothing like the musical tones of the research vessel. "You will stop your engines and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in destruction. You have 1 minute to comply." Captain stood perfectly still, her skin pale silver, the color of acceptance. Around her, the crew showed similar resignation. Some held hands, others whispered quiet prayers. They were going to surrender. No, said. Every eye turned to him. What did you say? Asked. I said no, we're not surrendering to pirates. Shook her head. The ship has weapons that could destroy us in seconds. We have no defenses, no weapons of our own. Fighting is not an option. Then we don't fight. His mind was racing, pieces falling into place like he was solving a puzzle. We trick them. Trick them? Bora stepped forward, her medical training showing in how she studied his face. You have a plan. Maybe. Looked at the display, at the ship waiting like a predator watching prey. They expect us to surrender because that's what everyone does. They expect us to be scared and helpless. What if we're not? We are scared and helpless, Danny pointed out. They don't have to know that. Turned to, Captain, how well can the fake damage? Could we make it look like our reactor is failing? Skin flickered with confusion. The ship could simulate such symptoms, yes, but why would we? A crippled ship isn't a threat, but it's also not valuable. They want cargo and prisoners they can sell. If they think we're about to explode, they'll be cautious. They'll keep their distance while they figure out what to do. That buys us time, said slowly, but time for what? Danny pointed to the young researcher. You said this nebula has never been mapped. That means no one knows we're here. But what if they did? Can you send a distress signal? Something that would attract other ships to this location. Danny's eyes went wide. A broadband emergency beacon. It would take hours to reach anyone, but if there are other vessels in the sector. They would detect the signal, interrupted. They would know we called for help. Exactly. Was smiling now, the cold smile of a predator. They would know that staying here is risky. That help might be coming. They'll have to decide, do they wait around to capture a damaged ship, or do they leave before things get complicated? Was staring at him with an expression he had never seen before. You want to bluff them, make them think we're more trouble than we're worth. That's part of it, but I want to do more, turned to her. You said our engines are at 30% in this nebula. What if we put everything into one burst, everything we have all at once? Could we reach the deeper part of the nebula, somewhere they can't follow? We could damage the engines permanently. Can you fix them? Was quiet for a long moment. Then her skin shifted to a color had never seen, something fierce and bright. Yes, I can fix anything. Then we have a plan. Looked at the crew, at their flickering skin and uncertain faces. Fake the damage, send the signal, and when they are confused and worried, we run. We disappear into the nebula before they can react. This is insane, Bora whispered. This is completely insane. Maybe, said. Her skin was changing, the pale resignation replaced by something warmer. But I would rather try something insane than surrender without a fight. The next 15 minutes were chaos. They began its performance. Lights flickered, the ship listed to one side, and false readings of reactor instability flooded the communication channels. Danny worked frantically to broadcast a distress signal that would reach half the sector. On the display, watched the ship hesitate. It moved closer, then stopped. Moved again, then stopped again. The raiders were confused, unsure what to do with prey that was behaving unexpectedly. Signal is broadcasting, Danny announced. They know. Engine burst ready, reported. On your command, Captain. Looked at, this is your plan, human. You give the order. Watched the ship. He watched it pull back slightly, probably contacting its command to ask for instructions. That moment of hesitation was everything. Now, he said. They screamed forward. Every light in the ship went dark as all power flowed to the engines. The force slammed against the floor, pressed the air from his lungs, made his vision blur and his ears ring. Through the observation windows, he saw the beautiful colors of the nebula rushing past. Behind them, the ship fired once, twice, but they were already gone, swallowed by the electromagnetic storms that blocked all scanning and pursuit. When the ship finally slowed, floating in a pocket of calm within the nebula's heart, the crew was silent. Then Danny laughed. Then Bora. Then everyone was laughing, their skin glowing in colors of joy and relief, hugging each other with 4 arms, celebrating survival. Walked to and knelt beside where he lay on the floor, still catching his breath. "Your species," she said softly. "You enjoy this, the fear, the risk, the narrow escape." Thought about his racing heart and shaking hands, about how alive he felt. "Yeah," he admitted, "a little bit." Shook her head slowly. "Humans are terrifying." "Thank you," said, "I think." 4 months after Hans stumbled onto the wrong ship, the finally reached a sector with regular travel routes. The crew had just finished repairing the engine damage from their escape when the sensors detected something that made everyone fall silent. A human vessel, a military patrol ship called the Bright Star, commanded by Lieutenant Park, stood in the communication room staring at the display. The human ship looked small compared to but it was beautiful in its own way, hard edges and metal surfaces, practical and familiar. Home, a piece of home was right there. "We can contact them," said quietly. She stood beside him, her gold eyes watching his face. "They can reach us within 2 days. You could be back with your people." Your people? The words felt strange. 4 months ago would have done anything to hear them. He would have run to that airlock and never looked back. Now he was not so sure. "Give me a week," he said. Tilted her head. "A week. To think, to decide." She did not argue. She simply nodded and left him alone with his thoughts. The next 7 days were the strangest of his life. He walked through the ship that had become his prison, then his workplace, then something close to home. He talked to the crew members who had become something close to friends. Danny found him in the observation deck on the 2nd day. Her skin was pale blue, sadness. He had learned. "You're going to leave," she said. It was not a question. "I don't know yet." "You should stay." She sat beside him, smaller than usual, her usual enthusiasm dimmed. "I haven't finished my research paper, and you promised to teach me more human words, bad words, the interesting ones." Laughed despite himself. "You could visit human space, come to Earth." "It's not the same." Danny looked out at the stars. "You're the only human I know, the only human who knows me. If you leave, I'll just be a scientist who met a human once. But here, you're your crew." She left before he could respond. Found him in the engine room on the 4th day. She was working on something complicated, her 4 arms moving in perfect coordination. "You're standing in my light," she said without looking up. "Sorry," he moved to the side. "What are you building?" "A redundancy system. Your idea, actually. You said human ships have backup systems for their backup systems because humans expect things to fail." She finally looked at him. "It's inefficient, it's paranoid, it's brilliant." "Is that a compliment?" "Don't get used to it." She returned to her work, but her skin was warm orange affection, carefully hidden. "I've designed 17 new systems based on human engineering philosophy since you arrived. My work has never been better." A pause. "I suppose I should thank you." "You could ask me to stay instead." His hand stopped moving. For a long moment she was silent. Then, "I don't ask for things, but if you chose to stay, I would not be disappointed." Bora found him in the medical bay on the 6th day. She was reviewing data, her gentle face thoughtful. "I've been studying human psychology," she said, "trying to understand how you think, why you behave the way you do." "Learn anything interesting." "Humans form attachments quickly. You bond with others through shared experience, shared struggle. Within weeks, you begin to see strangers as family." She looked at him. "You've bonded with this crew. I can see it in your behavior, your body language. Leaving will hurt you." "Staying might hurt me too," said quietly. I'll always be the strange human on the alien ship. Perhaps, Bora placed one of her smaller hands on his arm, but being strange does not mean being alone. We are all strange to someone. On the 7th day, Captain called him to her quarters. Her room was larger than the others, filled with research materials and personal items collected from dozens of worlds. She sat in a floating chair, her silver skin calm and neutral. "I have an offer," she said, "a formal position, cultural liaison and emergency tactics advisor for the—" She handed him a small device, a contract in both and human languages. Real responsibilities, real crew status, not a specimen, not a guest. Looked at the contract. His hands were shaking slightly. "Why?" he asked. "You could let me go, study other humans later. Why do you want me specifically?" Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "Because you changed us. Before you came, we were scientists, observers who watched the universe from a safe distance. You showed us that observation is not enough. Sometimes you must act, must fight, must take risks that logic says are foolish." She stood and walked to him. "We are better because of you, more complete. I do not want to lose that." Contacted the bright star that afternoon. Lieutenant appeared on the display, a human woman with sharp eyes and military posture. "Hand," she said, "we received the alert about a human civilian on an alien vessel. Are you safe? Do you need extraction?" "I'm safe," said, "and I'm not sure about extraction." His eyebrows rose. "You've been on that ship for 4 months. Are they holding you against your will?" "They were at first, now," he struggled for words. "It's complicated." "Take your time," his voice softened. "Whatever you decide will support you." Thought about Earth, about his small apartment, his boring job, his life that had felt empty even before he got lost on the wrong ship. He thought about the cargo boxes he used to count, the manifests he used to check, the days that blurred together into nothing. Then he thought about Danny's laughter and grudging respect and Bora's gentle kindness, about golden eyes watching him with something that might have been hope. He made his decision. "I have conditions," he told that evening. She raised an eyebrow. "You're negotiating." "I'm human, it's what we do." His conditions were simple: regular communication with Earth, shore leave at human stations whenever possible, and the right to intervene if any other humans accidentally wandered onto the ship. No more specimens. Agreed to everything. The next morning, watched through the observation window as the bright star departed. Lieutenant had wished him luck and promised to inform his family that he was alive and well. Strange, but well. Behind him the crew gathered. Danny was bouncing with excitement, pretended to be uninterested but kept glancing at him. Bora smiled warmly and stood at the center, her skin glowing with colors that finally recognized. "Welcome, Pride family." "So," said, "our first human crew member, what would you like to do first?" Grinned, "Show me what's next on the mission. I want to see what we're researching." "We," repeated. "We," confirmed. "I'm crew now, get used to it." The jump to hyperspace, continuing its journey through the stars. In her log, Captain recorded the day's events. Human Specimen 1 has been reclassified as crew member. His integration into our team is unprecedented and fascinating. He is loud, stubborn, inefficient, and inexplicably resilient. He solves problems through methods no logical species would attempt. He forms bonds with alarming speed and defends those bonds with surprising ferocity. Initial observations suggested humans were primitive beings worth studying from a distance. Extended observation has corrected this error significantly. Final assessment: humans are partners, companions, friends. Recommendation: acquire more humans carefully. Read the log entry later and laughed until his stomach hurt. He was a long way from home. He was the only human on a ship full of four-armed silver women who thought he was the strangest creature in the galaxy. And for the first time in his life, he knew exactly where he belonged.